Hi everybody, this is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts. This is a special episode. We got 3 herbivorous dinosaurs that we're going to be talking about. Let's actually talk about the first one, and it is Amphicoelias. Now, Amphicoelias in Greek or Latin means double hollow. It is a sauropod, probably lives around 150 million years ago. And now the length is unknown for this dinosaur. It's because it's actually the long-lost dinosaur that has been discovered by Edward Drinker Cope. And so Cope actually discovered this in 1870. And he described it because of the size of the bones. And so the bones were actually really large. And I guess a few fossils are still around, mainly pieces of vertebrae, and I think maybe a part of a leg bone. But what happened was when Cope actually discovered it, he actually had some notes that are still around today. He actually had some notes that were actually about this particular species of sauropod that was actually discovered. And so once he had the bones actually put in crates, some of those crates actually got lost. Either that they were actually taken by thieves, or otherwise they were destroyed by people that probably were looking for something else. And so, or otherwise, it could be another rival paleontologist that we don't know at the time actually possibly taken them and actually kept it secret to actually possibly sold it to a private collector, and we never actually got to find out what happened to those bones. And throughout the years after Cope discovered it, there's been speculation on how big was this animal. Some scientists have actually said that this animal could actually be over almost 200 feet long, and actually could actually be weighing over 100 tons. And so, but a lot of paleontologists now say that can't be true. If Amphicoelias was if we really had all the bones of Amphicoelias, we would actually possibly have found a little bit more of the the leg bones, and also more vertebrae, and maybe even the skull, and even parts of the tail. We could actually have found out how big this animal really was. And so that's all I got for Amphicoelias, and it's because it's a really long lost dinosaur that was just lost to science, and we will never know what happened to it. All right, the next one, it's another sauropod, as Futalognkosaurus, and it's a sauropod, like I said. Futalognkosaurus from indigenous or Greek for giant chief lizard, Futalognkosaurus. And fossils have been found in South America, late Cretaceous, 80 million years ago, about 100 feet long, probably would have weighed 50 to 75 tons, And of course, like all sauropods, it's a herbivore. And by the size of this sauropod, it is a titanosaur. So titanosaurs were actually one of the more dominant sauropods in the Cretaceous. It's because they grew so huge that they actually just were kind of like the actual gigantism of land animals. And so around that time, South America was still separated from North America and from other continents, and it was actually would have been, because this dinosaur would not actually be the largest, it would actually be one of the largest. And so it would actually consider it to be like probably a few notches behind Argentinosaurus in terms of South American sauropods, and the one that would actually take the cake is actually Argentinosaurus. Argentinosaurus would actually be one, and then it'd be Jornadus, and then it'd actually be Futalognkosaurus. And so Futalognkosaurus would actually be probably feeding off of a high branching trees, probably, but probably wouldn't actually raise its neck up really high like Brachiosaurus. But we don't even know if like sauropods even raise their necks way up in the air, raise their heads way up in the air, because it seems like now the evidence is pointing towards is that sauropods probably had their necks a little bit more of a horizontal position. It's because they actually could not raise their necks up high enough, and also there's no curvature in the vertebrae to actually support that they actually did this. I mean, if you're like Brachiosaurus, that's a different way of thinking it. And of course, with Futalognkosaurus, the top predators at that time would actually be the Amphicoelias, and so it would actually be like an Allosaurus, or otherwise maybe Carnotaurus, and so those animals would be the main predators of Futalognkosaurus, and so that would actually be the case for them, and so with the extinction of Futalognkosaurus would actually Futalognkosaurus, excuse me, I can't even say its name, is that you probably couldn't adapt to the different changes in the environment, and also it would have been really hard to actually stay big at that particular time after 87 million years ago, because how do you actually retain your size and throughout that time, and can you actually survive being that big after like say 80 million years ago, when like the climate was starting to get a little bit cooler, and also that the climate couldn't support a gigantic animal like that. And so that would be the case for Futalognkosaurus. Excuse me, I still can't say the name. Now the next dinosaur we're actually going to be talking about is a stegosaur called Kentrosaurus. And so Kentrosaurus is a primitive stegosaur. It's a little bit smaller than Stegosaurus. Fossils have been found in Tanzania, and it's a late Jurassic stegosaur. And I can't remember the actual meaning of the name, but I know Saurus is actually reptile, and so that would be that case. But if anybody knows what Kentro means in Latin, let me know, because then I can actually kind of get that. I get the idea of what the translation is. And of course the fossils have been found in Tanzania, and it's a Jurassic stegosaur, late Jurassic. Now it would not be living in the same habitat as Stegosaurus, so Africa is different from like the European habitats and also the North American habitats where Stegosaurus is actually from. And so Kentrosaurus was actually discovered by a German paleontologist called Edwin Henning in 1915. And so this was actually during the time of around the time of World War I. And so this is actually when German scientists were actually kind of invading Africa to actually kind of see what the landscapes are, and also which countries they could take over to actually support their armies. And so a lot of scientists, especially geologists, were actually down there to actually possibly find like any sorts of like new animals that they could actually discover. And this is just this is post Bone Wars, so this is actually like 30 to 40 years after the Bone Wars. And so this is actually going to be a really interesting time for paleontologists. It was still a discovery type of age for paleontologists. And Kentrosaurus, in terms of body features, it does have very thin, but not really robust type of plates like Stegosaurus. The plates on the front half are actually kind of like a arrow shaped. They're kind of arrow shaped, kind of like a spearhead type of shape. And so, like all Stegosaurs, they were probably used for more likely for display. And the other half of the body is actually spikes, so that might actually present a threatening presence to predators. And that would actually be how predators would probably kind of stay away from it a little bit more, concerning that it's got all these spikes on like half of its body, and so it could not. So predators had a hard time actually possibly getting towards those spikes. Now the predators at that time would be like primitive allosaurs, some primitive ceratosaurs, and so those would actually be the main predators of Kentrosaurus, but mainly ceratosaurs, because ceratosaurs were actually going after small to medium-sized prey, and so that would actually be the prey choices for ceratosaurs. And so that would actually be the case for Kentrosaurus, is that it probably could encounter both primitive allosaurs and ceratosaurs, so it could actually have that case of that both of them probably did go after it. But Kentrosaurus probably did live in small groups, probably did actually have other dinosaurs actually living alongside them to actually, like, say, be an alarm system. Like there's tracks of Camptosaurus along with Stegosaurus tracks, and so that would actually be the case, is that Camptosaurus and Stegosaurus actually had like a relationship that shows like Camptosaurus was kind of like the alarm system for Stegosaurus, considering that Camptosaurus has got better eyesight and probably has better hearing than Stegosaurus. Kentrosaurus would probably actually be the same way, and probably actually had like smaller dinosaurs actually be like the eyes and ears to watch out for predators. And that would be the case there. And of course, extinction with Kentrosaurus is that it couldn't adapt to like new changes in the environment, and also with the Cretaceous actually starting to happen, it probably couldn't actually adapt to like the rising floodwaters, rising sea levels, and also it couldn't adapt to the like much warmer environments that were actually going to be happening in Africa, and so probably became a little bit more swampy and all that, so it probably couldn't adapt to that type of environment. And so that's why like you would see like different kinds of sauropods and armored dinosaurs actually started to take over a little bit more after Kentrosaurus. Alright, that's it for now. Now next week will actually be an answering questions episode, so if you got any questions about dinosaurs or any other prehistoric life, feel free to email me at dinochrist71@gmail.com, or just go on my Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts with Dino Chris. Like the page, you can actually post your questions in the comment section on any Facebook post, but remember, keep your questions short and to the point. You can also follow me on Twitter at CSGRIL. That's my Twitter page. I post pretty cool stuff on there, and you take care of the people around you. And also for younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you can have for good education. It's very important to have good education. With good education, you need a good job in the future. And this would actually be special episode number 86, if I remember correctly. So then 14 more away from 100, and when we actually get to 95, feel free to actually tell me which dinosaur, only one, that would actually consider to be the 100th special episode. And I would say probably pick like a certain maybe like a famous sauropod, or otherwise maybe like a ankylosaur, or otherwise maybe a theropod I haven't even talked about yet. And so I would specifically want a dinosaur, and especially one that everybody could actually get a little bit more information out of. Alright, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys next week.